My employer contributes 10% to an ESOP each year while also letting me contribute 8% to my 401k with a 50%, so 4% total match. I also work in an intense career at a CPA firm, Brian would know. How can I justify leaving this role with a 14% employer retirement contribution?
It's hard. It's really, really hard. So for those of you who do not know, an ESOP is an employee stock ownership plan where basically you get to become an owner in the company for which you work. So it's a little bit different than like a profit sharing contribution. You're actually receiving an employer contribution, in this case, 10% into ownership of the company. So as the company grows, as the company becomes more profitable, you get to benefit from that at some later date when you cash in your ESOP shares. Well, in addition to that, Mr. Broxley puts in 8% of his pay and his employer puts another 4% as a matching contribution. So there is indeed a 14% employer dollar figure going in, and some of it's going into a liquid 401k account that can be invested and some of it's going into ownership of the company. Mr. Broxley, it certainly sounds like your company is trying to implement a plan where they want to incentivize people to be here and stay here long term and have an ownership stake. I would argue this is a very good example of some golden handcuffs. And so I think the question he's ultimately asking is, Brian, when we are measuring our current existence, the current life that we're living, the current job that we have, and we're measuring that against other options, other alternatives, how do we decide? Is it actually worth leaving? Is the grass actually greener on the other side? Or are the situations sometimes too good that you can't even walk away from it?
Yeah. By the way, when you first gave this question, Megan, I thought you said Mr. Broccoli.
We call Mr. Broccoli.
But I'm so glad we had the name actually up on the screen because for a few seconds it took me. I had to recalibrate the brain because all I could think about was broccoli. And then, okay, back in.
So you heard the question, right?
I did hear the question. I mean, I will say 14% employer contribution is strong.
With some of it going in ESOP.
So that's why I would definitely, this is a measure twice, cut once type component because employers do this. You see it. We've seen it like Mayo Clinic doctors, all kind of people who will load you up because they want you to stay invested in their organization. And that's pretty noble. But you have to ask yourself, where am I going? Am I happy? Am I fulfilled? Am I living my best life? And even with a generous compensation structure, I would say if you're having doubts on that, maybe you want to create another plan, but that doesn't mean you execute the plan. It means you have to do the steps for it. So you first have to kind of take inventory of yourself. How marketable are you? How successful will you be if you go out on your own? He's already kind of given us some indicator. He's got a background in public accounting.
Sounds pretty marketable, right?
I'm going to come and give some specific thoughts on public accounting after I give the general stuff for everybody else, and then we'll nerd out for the accountants out there. And then I think you just got to know where you're going. This is the 3D glasses where you're talking about creating your own plan for the future. A lot of people think that when I say put on your 3D glasses, meaning you have a doo-doo plan for how horrible can it possibly be. There's the down-to-earth, the reasonable plan, and then, of course, there's the dream plan. That's not just for starting a business. It's not for anything that's that exotic. It can be just for changing jobs or changing careers or any of the above because it's basically putting you in the mindset of looking at all the scenarios so you're not surprised and you can actually attack it. Now, here's the specialized advice for the CPAs. And don't send me hate mail if you work for a large CPA firm. I have a lot of I graduated with an accounting degree, worked in public accounting. I have relatives because I try to convince everybody to become a public accountant because I think it is great training. But anybody who goes into public accounting, you're going to have a dilemma, career dilemma, somewhere between years 4 and 6 is you either stay in public accounting or you probably need to kind of exit and go into consulting or do something else. I know quite a number of people that have stayed in, and it's a great career. I mean, there is nothing wrong with it, but there is a lot of times with public accounting, it's the issue of you only get paid when you're doing hourly work. And that sometimes can be hard. I mean, all my friends that stayed in public accounting and run large firms now, they just get burned out. They're tired. I mean, they make great incomes. They live a great life. But it's just sometimes they don't want to be on, and it's so much so with how they get paid and so forth. So it's stressful. So it's not a negative towards accounting, but I think that fortunately this skill set is very marketable, because if you think about what is the language of business, it is the financial statements. It's the income statements. It's the balance sheets. It's the cash flow statements. And guess who knows how to speak that fluently? It's the public accountant. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why so many CPAs run companies. There's so many reasons that you see public accountants that run real estate empires. It's because when you get really nerdy with the math, you have the foundation to be really successful in life. And that's why I try to encourage everybody who, I find out you have an aptitude towards math and you have an aptitude towards business. I usually try to talk people into it. And this is the same advice I'd give my niece who's working for a big 6 firm right now, but, or big 4.
Big 4, I think.
Big 4. Now. Yeah, I'm old. So it's one of those things. So I just gave you the exact same advice that I would give my niece.
And I think if you're thinking through like, okay, how do I justify leaving? There are financial things that you have to think about, and there are non-financial. Obviously, you talked about some of the non-financial stuff. Like, do you have a long commute? Do you not enjoy the people you work with? Do you not enjoy the people that you're working for? Those are all things that you have to factor in. But there are realistic financial aspects where sometimes it does make sense to stick it out in a less than ideal situation, so that either you can get to the part of your career where you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor, or to position yourself to be able to move somewhere else. We've seen people do this before where, oh man, I'm in an industry and I just don't like this. I don't enjoy it, don't want to do the work, don't want to be part of this. And they make a career shift, and that made all the sense in the world. And then we see people who just say, man, I'm impatient, I don't want to wait, and they end up leaving an amazing opportunity simply because they were impatient, or simply because the early stages got difficult. So in your circumstance, you have to assess which one of those is true. Should I continue to maybe do this, maybe continue to save up, build up, begin with the end in mind, to position myself to be able to make a career transition 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road? Or is now the best time to do that? And it's a weighing of both the financial pieces as well as the non-financial pieces.